that's what a lot of people are quoting or saying is that, we believe in the pan theory, everything will pan out in the end. Well, you just have to read chapter 2 and chapter 3 and find out that not to be true. We've got to remember in the book of Acts, I think it's around chapter 22, Paul is talking to the Ephesian elders. And he's trying to teach the Ephesian elders that they need to be good shepherds of their flock. That there are those who are going to come into the flock that are wolves in sheep's clothing. And that they have to protect them. Well, what the Church of Ephesus did is they did such a good job of that. And that they screened everybody out that at all remotely appeared to be like a wolf. They did it to the point where they lost their first love. And that's how we're introduced in some ways to the book of Revelation, chapter 2. The very first church that it's spoken of, it says, you're doing all these great things. But there's one thing that you're not doing that is so great. And that is that you've lost your ability to love. You become legalistic in everything that you've done. And then John decides to open up the book of Revelation as a means to try and get the church to change its direction. There are 7 churches that are listed, and all those churches need to make sure that the direction they're going is a good direction. So I need to go back a little bit. So let me take you first of all to 1 John. 1 John talks about, or John is speaking to the people and he's saying, okay, you guys are all looking for the Antichrist. Now, let's face it. The Antichrist is intriguing and something, 666 and all these sort of things are just absolutely fascinating. But John makes some interesting observations about the Antichrist. He said, I want you to tell something. He puts this in what we call the global aorist. Let me explain to you what that means. That means, he says, you're looking for the Antichrist, but I'm telling you, there always has been an Antichrist, and there's an Antichrist right now that you have to worry about. So he's saying, now think about our definition. We say that the Bible is inspired Word of God. What does that mean? It means it transcends time and culture. That means that the book of Revelation has always been current. It can never, ever be current. It's never for the future. It's always for the present. It's always there to help us identify good and evil. It's there. So, of course, let's take chapter 2 again, the church of Ephesus. He said, if you don't make these changes, I'm going to come and remove your lampstand. You're standing with God. And you're going to remove that. This is not a book of Revelation. It's not a book for the non-Christian world. It is a book for the Christian world. It is a book to tell the churches that you've got a long, long journey ahead of you before I come back. And every generation has to make certain decisions. And the book of Revelations is all about helping us make those right decisions. Let me give you an example. There are a lot of heroes that come into the world, and they seem to be absolutely good. How do you discern? What's your discernment process like? Well, the book of Revelation talks about the 666. What do you mean, the 666? Yeah, it's the number of man. What does that mean? It's the number of man. He said, look at it. This is what I want you to understand. Evil has one thing that evil cannot do. Evil can duplicate miracles. Evil can duplicate all kinds of things. Like there are going to be wolves in sheep's clothing. The sheep's clothing implies that when we look at them, they look like they're doing good. When the disciples looked at the Pharisees, they thought the Pharisees were doing the world good. When they looked at the temple, they said, look at our great temple. And Jesus said, it's going to be destroyed. Well, how do we tell evil from good? There is only one way that is always a sure way. And that's what Revelation tells us about 666. He says the 666 means that evil is never generous. If you ever get yourself into a very difficult, tight spot, and you need somebody to be generous to you, it will not be. In fact, Jesus tells a parable about the same. It's the parable where this guy can't pay his debts. He goes to the landowner, and the landowner says to him, okay, you can't do it. I'll reach out to you. I forgive you your debts. Then this guy goes out and he sees a brother who owes him very little. And he says, you know something? I'm going to get every cent out of that guy I can. And he went and did that. The first landowner turned around and said, you can't do that. The principle of love is that if I'm generous to you, you got to be generous to other people. And when you're not generous, you're the 666. You're participating with evil. And that is why Revelation is extremely current today. It's not about trying to, that's how we find the Christ, that's how we find the truth, that's how we find love. But it's not generous, then it's not of God. When people are in tight, difficult positions. That's just one example of why Revelations is current.